Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be helping people who are approaching midlife find a way that they can start teaching themselves new tricks to perhaps redesign a brand new life for themselves. Usually by this time, a lot of us find ourselves frustrated or perhaps happy. It really depends on the spectrum of how you thought yourself to the situation you're in. Of course, with today's news, especially in the United States, we find ourselves about to vote ourselves in either a brand new leader or try to get the other one that we've already got in office to continue what he's done for the next 4 years. The question is, what will that be and will we feel satisfied? A lot of times, though, we find the decisions that we make, we sometimes not really want to take personal responsibility for, but sometimes in the deeper subconscious realm, we realize that as our thoughts churn and burn over and over again, that we are actually the masters of our own destiny. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is author of the book, The All-Known Diary. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today someone who's going to open our minds up to the ideal and the realization that we are the creators of our reality and what we can do about it. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Mr. Daniel Rechnetzer. Daniel, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Now, I understand, just as we jump into how all this started for you, that you started or have what is known as the UI group, the All-Knowing Brain Intelligence Nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us about what your journey was to get to this point.
Wow, great. The UI group, the Universal Intelligence Group, is a business devoted to teaching people how to connect to their own purpose. That within every single one of us is a incredible intelligence, an infinite intelligence that fills the body with life, that steers us on the path to greener pastures, that fills us with wisdom and guidance, and to show everyone who they really are. We often come to believe that we are this personality that we were shown we are since we were kids. We believe we're smart at this or not smart at that, and we're good at that and not good at this. People like us or they don't. And in truth, what the UI group does, it teaches people that you're none of those things. You're actually far, far bigger and far greater than that. So we have a whole range of different workshops teaching people anything from how to clear their limiting beliefs in the subconscious mind, to how to have a natural pain-free birth, to profound parenting, to becoming all-knowing human beings, which is who we are at our real core.
Now, it seems kind of daunting, difficult as you're describing there for a lot of us, especially at a point where we approach midlife and we feel that we've experienced or we have heard it all. And no matter how much we reach out and try to redefine ourselves, perhaps on the inside, it's that outside reaching that probably is one of our first trip-ups or potential mistakes.
Yeah, there is a very commonly held belief that in order to grow and for me to change, that I need to almost be punished or I'm going to be hurt by looking at some things about myself that I don't want to look at. And in truth, what actually needs to occur is you're not going to see things that hurt you. Rather, you're going to see things that are liberating. The things that hurt you are the things that we believe about ourselves. They're the things that aren't true. But we're going to start to see some very liberating things, and really it's about what we have to let go of. Mm-hmm. The old personality, the ways we used to relate to ourselves. So it's almost like an illusion that it's a daunting process, when really it's a really straightforward, very liberating, very light process to move through. The mind kind of plays tricks on us and says, no, it's going to be too hard, when it really isn't.
Now, how did all this start for you? When did this happen?
Look, it's a great question, Daniel, and it's really a series of lots of different experiences. And one of the things that happened a lot to me as a child. Now, I should say I was brought up with a lot of self-doubt. I had a very hard childhood in terms of feeling that I was stupid, I was inadequate, and I wasn't good enough. But whilst that was going on, I had a lot of very, very interesting experiences. People would come into my life, and they would come to me and they would say, I've got a migraine. And I'd kind of look them in the eye, and it would come to me in my thoughts why they had that illness, why the migraine was there. I was being told what was the cause of it. Or someone would say something like, oh, this poor guy is dying of cancer, and the answer as to why they had cancer and how to cure it would come into my mind. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to deal with it. I just continued on like, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, being ambitious and doing what, that age group does. But in my life, I started to get very sick. Things started to fall apart in my life. And eventually, and cutting a very long story short, eventually, you get into so much pain, you've got to throw your hands up in the air and say, clearly I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to come back to what feels right. So there were many defining moments of deciding, do I go in the direction that society's telling me to go, or do I move into what actually my body and what that feeling inside my body is saying that's going to bring me a lot more peace? So there was a lot of kicking and screaming, a lot of bumping my head up against the brick wall, to actually come back to a very peaceful place where there is flow and where things are far simpler than I was making them to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, all-knowing seems to be a pretty large phrase or a statement that perhaps for a lot of people they'll think either A, that's daunting and pretty incredible, it's a pretty large horizon for me to reach out for.
Yeah, sure.
Or it could also sound like, geez, it sounds like you've got it all figured out, a sort of know-it-all. Now, when you especially look at a day and age when it comes to religion or when it comes to gurus, for instance, and we've certainly encountered a lot of that within our radio program, and I must say, these are people that mean well, but I think a lot of times you tend to see either that leader gets off of track to where they get full of themselves enough to where they enjoy the people at their feet. Like, I've got this answer, and I'm going to hold that crumb or that carrot out just long enough for you to become loyal to me, so that I can maintain my status. Or, perhaps eventually you'll get there. Now, I find it interesting, in a lot of ways, especially how people, tend to behave in situations. Like, to give you an idea, we were out seeing I wouldn't say a religious leader, but let's just say a guru. We went out to see or participate in one of his seminars. The guy commanded an audience that evening of probably right around, I would say, 500 people. And the first thing I thought it was really neat because we got to sit in the front row, which was really nice. We showed up, come on in, boom, These people were all paying for tickets, but they allowed us in, as a gift or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, and so he's basically got a bed up here on stage. He shows up in his pajamas, and I thought, oh, what a great way to make a living, just going around and answering questions in your pajamas while sitting in bed, right?
Yeah.
But what was really funny about it, as I was telling my wife later on after we left, I said, what is it with people when they happen to be at these, let's say, seminars, or they go to meet this guru, that they feel that the more spiritual they are, the more consistent this particular question is. Like, for instance, you're going to ask a question, because there was a time that he held a moment where he was answering questions, and the question starts out always like this: how does one get this, or how does one achieve that? How does one? It cracks me up how we tend to sort of fall into this way that we behave around people like this. And then what you talk about in the All-Knowing Diary is, if you figure this out, which you lay out in the book, is that, you really don't need to do that too much. You don't need to follow these people too much. It's all right there. Did you find yourself kind of on one of those journeys where you run around after every guru? I know I did for a lot of years, with self-help. And so how did that work out for you?
Well, look, my journey, I always felt that everyone knew more than me.
Mm-hmm.
I always, every time I needed to make a decision, every time I was trying to figure something out, I would go to somebody else. I was very insecure. I had a lot of self-doubt. And in my world, everyone knew more than me.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel, that didn't work out at all. That's where all the brick walls happened. That was a very painful experience.
It certainly didn't work out for the Manson group, did it?
No, yeah, and life is always showing us, it's like, you need to trust in yourself.
Right.
And that's really where we're coming from with the All-Knowing Diary and the courses we teach, is saying, we're not your guru,
Mm-hmm.
we're not your master, we're just a tour guide.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the tour guide showing you parts about yourself and your brain that many of you didn't know exist. And all the answers, all the wisdom and all the guidance are actually within you. You're a very self-sufficient being. You can access all the answers. You can heal your own body. Don't look to us. Don't become dependent on us. We're going to teach you how to fish for yourself. And that's the new age. That's the new evolution of humanity, is to start seeing each other and start seeing ourselves as who we really are, as you know, these incredible beings that have the access, the intelligence within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I think what's really wonderful about what seems to be at first an unassuming book is one that really begins to open up, and you can sense that it's very personal, that a person will actually claim it to become personal for themselves, because you have a nice blend of what I would consider to be insightful poetry as you begin to open up yourself and show people, you know, this experience that they can have in themselves to find out all they'll ever need to know about anything they need to know or do. What do you think is the thing from your experience, because you conduct workshops all over the world, you work with, you know, I think thousands of people, that really trip people up the most from realizing, you know, their dreams or the life that they want to manifest itself?
You know, Daniel, it comes down to something so simple but so detrimental. It's called self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is self-doubt plays a really big role in not only our health, but how our brain works. Now, for most people, they know that there's two parts of our brain, two hemispheres. Now, those two hemispheres are actually intended to work as one. Now, when we have self-doubt, those hemispheres disconnect.
Oh.
Now, when they disconnect, we start moving, we move into a space of what we call our belief system. So our intelligence is only being derived from what we know so far, our fears, our anxieties, our beliefs, and what we've learned. Now, here's where things get interesting. When we move out of self-doubt and we move into a space of self-belief, those two hemispheres start becoming one. And when they become one, they become more sensitive and more like a kind of wireless internet. And they start being able to pick up on intelligence that surrounds us. If you can imagine, like our lungs inhale oxygen from outside, the brain also inhales intelligence. We're part of this amazing field of energy, of intelligence. The brain perceives the energy as information. And so the biggest thing that holds us back is the belief that we're not enough. Mm-hmm. Self-doubt is an absolute killer in our humanity at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. I know, especially in America, there wasn't too long ago that I was doing a particular program about the messages we receive, subliminally speaking.
Yes.
And, you know, there's been a big argument for years, well, you know, subliminal advertising really doesn't work. And the particular guest we had on our program says, you know, it's interesting that is stated, that subliminals really don't work. They've sort of proven that they don't. Yet there was this big, I guess, court battle, and I believe it was the state of Utah, where they were going to pass a law that required advertising companies to basically inform people that, yes, in fact, subliminal advertising was in fact being used. And he says, for an industry that was claiming none of this worked, there sure seemed to be a lot of people within that industry showing up to prevent this law from being passed.
Interesting, yeah.
But, when you think about what you're talking about, when you say self-doubt, you think of the messages subliminally. They could even be either before birth, during birth, after birth, whatever, that we really download a lot of information. Our brain we really remember everything we've experienced, and it sort of stores, as I understand, in the subconscious, and that is where our reality begins. And you talk about how you merge the conscious and the subconscious mind so that it begins to serve you rather than you becoming a servant of that. Could you kind of describe that for us?
Yeah, sure. Look, there are kind of three layers, if you like, of consciousness. The conscious mind, we're all familiar with. It's the part that's listening and processing what I'm saying now. There's the subconscious mind, which is all those thoughts that are behind the scenes, but more importantly, they're the experiences we've had as a child and as adults. They're our belief systems, what we believe to be true in our reality. And then there's another layer, and this is the most important. This is really what we refer to as all-knowing. There's a part of us called the superconscious mind. Now, the conscious mind is constantly dealing with, do I believe what's in the subconscious mind, and do I draw from that finite storehouse of information like a hard drive, or do I believe what is in the superconscious mind? And what's in the superconscious mind isn't constrained by beliefs or experience, but our access to it is being constrained by our belief system. So there's a technique in the All-Knowing Diary that teaches us how to move beyond that subconscious, beyond our beliefs, to access that superconscious. Because those moments of genius that we have in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., or those intuitions that we get when our mind is still, well, that's coming from our superconscious. And that's where all the answers are. We're all kind of, you can imagine, we're all kind of connected by this, well, it's almost like an enormous brain that connects us all, and we're in this field of it. And the superconscious mind is drawing on that intelligence. It's like if you've ever watched a school of fish swim and they all swim in this beautiful unison. Well, they're all connecting into that. Well, all of nature's connecting into this field. So that's what we're aiming for, is going into the superconscious to get our answers.
And when you take a look at this, the ideal of beliefs, a lot of people are really beginning to spout that off almost as a religious dogma this day and age. But they still seem to only scratch the surface and get stuck right there. It's like they know this, and they try to move beyond that to get to this being a co-creator of their own reality. You have, What the Bleep, which was a movie produced just some years back, and The Secret, and they go, oh, this is great, this law of attraction, and they get out there and they do what they think they're being suggested to do, and yet they still find themselves it just isn't working. They're still diseased, they're still broke, they're still miserable. What's going on there?
Well, it's really interesting, and this is a big thing that we teach in our workshops, is that despite your best intentions, despite what your conscious mind dreams or desires or affirms or puts on a poster or whatever, the subconscious mind is really the master of the destiny. What we experience in life is a mirror image, a reflection of what we believe at the subconscious level. So our financial situation, our relationships, our ability to heal ourselves is based on what we believe at the subconscious level. So, as I said, we can have all these aspirations, but if the subconscious mind disagrees, the subconscious mind is infinitely more strong, infinitely more insistent, if you like, than the conscious mind, and it gets its way. So if you're wanting to create these big breakthroughs, we need to change our subconscious beliefs. They're the ultimate drivers.
Mm-hmm. Now, I like what you talk about in the book of how you can begin to get started, and I'm pretty sure that what you're saying about what you just said was true, is that we tend to attract in our lives the experiences that show us what's really going on inside of us.
Yes.
So back to the law of attraction, I remember one time, and I've heard this from people many, different times, they're saying, this law of attraction is a bunch of nonsense, and I say, well, why is that? And then they'll describe the story. Perhaps they want a better job, and and it just isn't working out for them. And I said, well, the truth is, the law of attraction constantly is working. It's always working. You're always attracting, but you have to ask yourself the question: what is it that you're attracting? And if you start paying attention to that a little bit more, like what you're talking about with your beliefs and what you radiate out, then you can begin to realize, oh my goodness, I didn't realize before that I was doing all of this. And it's pretty liberating.
Yeah, well, it's the amazing thing is that the bulk of these thoughts, the bulk of these intentions are in our blind spot. They're in our subconscious mind.
Right.
So, we have people come to us and say, I've got this illness or I've got this migraine, and you connect and you show them what's in their subconscious mind, and you say something like, you believe that you're an absolute fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And their conscious mind goes, I do not. And it's like, hang on, just sit with it for a minute. And all of a sudden they burst into tears because they've just connected with a part of themselves that they've been running from, that's behind the background, that's in the subconscious. So yeah, it's what we're creating out there is not what we're conscious of, because if we're conscious of it, we don't need to bring it into our awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So the reality, our physical body and the reality around us is showing up. It's saying, hey, this is what you don't know that's going on. This is what's subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Thought you should know.
and what's interesting, what I like about what you're right, is that people who, you talk about emotional triggers, and I guess that would be the place for our listeners right now to begin to just at least consider what you're talking about in your book, The All-Knowing Diary, is, for instance, emotional triggers, I think, is the place where you can start cleaning up and changing your beliefs, because beliefs, they're acquired, they can come and they can go.
Absolutely. It's a really important point. We have so many emotional triggers. We have so many reactions. Somebody says something happens, and there's a reaction in our body. And we've kind of been conditioned since we were young, to kind of overlook it and do anything but look at it. But the reactions, these triggers, like you say, Daniel, beautifully, is that it's saying, hey, you've just reached the full extent of a belief. This is from the past. If you look at it now and you see what the truth is, A, you're going to create a much more expansive experience. You're going to be able to let more in. And B, you won't have that reaction ever again. Mm-hmm. It's just the past coming up for healing. And as you said, it's a real catalyst to show up where the beliefs are being activated.
Mm-hmm. Because I've heard many times when you look at the power of belief, and really, again, back to the United States, when you take a look at a lot of our advertising, we're made to believe that by a certain age that we are no longer useful, and so we're expected to retire. So look at all the messages that are behind that. And you pick those up even as a kid, I'm 12 years old, what do I need to worry about life insurance, and what do I need to worry about, my retirement plan? But the messages start back even then. You take a look at, for instance, your youth. Well, between the concerts and especially all of the reality shows when it comes to potentially being a performer, whether it's being a singer, a dancer, whatever the case is, you got a slew of this nonsense with people judging people that are allegedly experts in these industries, telling you, well, this is the way it is, and for you to measure up and get into this, this is what you need to be. And, it almost, you get to a point thinking, unless you're able to shut all this off, how do I ever stand a chance in this world? But yet, that's the place to start, I would think.
Well, on one hand, if you are going to listen to everyone but yourself, mm-hmm. you almost don't stand a chance, because these guys aren't experts in you. They're not experts in your reality. They're not experts in what your truth is. So, yeah, it's a really good point to start in saying, hey, am I trusting myself in what I feel to be right, or am I doubting myself and believing what everyone else tells me? Because there's not one way, and when we start allowing in that we have the answers, oh my God, Daniel, what gets revealed is a really gentle, beautiful way that doesn't take away from your health, it doesn't take away from your family, it doesn't ruin your children in the process of being successful. there's that dichotomy there. You can choose to go follow what society says and what your beliefs say, or you can see yourself as more and follow what's in your highest good, and that's a far more fruitful, scenic path to go.
Mm-hmm. I remember a quote, and that could have come from that was around something I was reading about Steve Jobs, one of the co-founders of Apple, and it was something that goes to the like of the the people who are crazy enough to think that you can change the world are the ones that usually do. Something like that. And, and so when you start taking command of what you're talking about here, and being the all-knowing, tell us what that experience is like, because it almost sounds like as you get quiet and you listen to your own inner self, all the answers to everything that you'll ever need are always right there. Would that be almost akin to the voice of God, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question. The experience, I mean, the whole book that you've got there, the All-Knowing Diary, that came directly from that part of me, that inner self, if you like. And it's almost like sitting in a very quiet, it's almost like sitting in a meditative space where you pose a question into your thoughts, into your mind, and an answer comes back. And it's just this dialogue that happens. It's almost like your brain is like Google, and you type the question in, and it's exactly like on the internet, the answer comes back. Sometimes you can let in the answer, sometimes, you go into doubt. But, it's for some people, if and it depends on your perspectives and your upbringing, for some it's talking to that God intelligence that is part of, that is the universe that we're a part of. But I like to give people a really nice picture here, if I may, Daniel, that to help understand how this works is, if you look at the human being, you get to see that the human being is both physical and also awareness, consciousness. Now, we often think that consciousness is confined within us, but when you see it truly, you actually get to see that we exist within consciousness. So we're in this massive, massive pool, the whole universe. If you were to overlay on all the planets, all the stars, this huge, huge brain, we're actually in that. And our brain, the micro or the macro, is pulling down on that collective field, and some would call that God energy, if you like. Some call it your inner self, your higher self, or some even call it your soul. We call it universal intelligence, amongst many other things. And quantum physicists call it the quantum field. We're actually, the brain is pulling that in and is trying to bring in that all-knowing intelligence into your body so that we can all live in a way that's not only harmonious to our own well-being, but also harmonious to the planet. And as we can see, we've got a little way to go on that one still.
Mm-hmm. Now, describe for me, if you can, how this change was for you, this ideal of whole brain, of using everything there is, and what began to happen for you in this process as far as change is concerned.
Sure. Well, the process started with me realizing that I had no idea what I was talking about. It was like a Seinfeld moment, where George Costanza realizes that every single one of his instincts actually is wrong. And then Jerry says to him, well, if every one of your instincts is wrong, if you do the opposite, it's going to turn out to be right. And I had a Seinfeld moment where I realized every impulse in my body leads me up the garden path. Mm-hmm. That was the beginning. And then it got to a point where I kind of threw up my hands and said, all right, I knew there was that inner voice inside of me. And I said, all right, I'm prepared to listen. And it was from that point on that guidance started, that direction, that dialogue started to happen. And it began, very kind of slowly. First thing was break up with this girlfriend because she is ruining your life, and that was hard. And, then it was, there's this beautiful, sell your marketing business because that's not why you're on this planet. Mm-hmm. And then the next message was, here, the person who wants to buy your marketing business, she is the one for you. And now she's my wife 6 years later, and we've got a beautiful child. And it just feeds you these little insights. And then the more you trust it, the more you act on what you're given, the more information comes. And the all-knowing diary is really the culmination of all that information that came to me when I was in a trusting and listening space.
Mm-hmm. Humans seem to be creatures that as much as we embrace change, we seem to only really want to embrace it when it comes to favorable change, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Let's say, for instance, someone listening or many people listening today will say, well, this all sounds good. I'd really love to quit what I'm doing for work, but I can't because of all my financial obligations that I'm involved with. And so all these reasons come up why they want to stay stuck. What would you say to people like that?
Look, it's a real tough one, and it's where a lot of people come unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
What you get shown to do from that all-knowing space is only let go of the things that hurt you. Now, yes, some of those things might be a career or an unhealthy relationship, but that's where this amazing trust needs to come in, that if you're being shown that, it's A, because it hurts you, and B, that there's something bigger and better to come in. It's never to deprive you. It's never to put you in jeopardy. But we've got to, that fear that comes up, we just need to go, it's just an illusion. Because if you're being guided by an intelligence that knows what it's talking about. And this is really where we need to stay the course, and we just need to push through it. And this guidance, we've gone through a lot of hardship. We planted a lot of bad seeds through accessing, our belief system. We created a lot of debt. We created a lot of bad relationships. And in following this guidance, we've been able to move way beyond that debt, way into some amazing people in our lives, amazing opportunities. But there were some hairy times. The fear would come up and say, hey, no, this is too scary. But if you just stay the course, in time, I tell you, it is, if you're going to work hard at anything, it's this. It's staying the course and following what that inner guidance is trying to say, because it knows.
Daniel, I was just thinking as you were saying that it seems, and I just actually said this to a friend of mine not too long ago, that when it comes to being successful, let's just say that you're someone who wants to build a business and become wealthy. It isn't really the fundamentals of building that business, or becoming wealthy, the fundamentals of that are hard. The real hard work is what it takes for us inside to change, to see those realities exist. When you can do this, all that stuff not only comes easily, but it comes faster than you think. Like, for instance, a lot of people may hold the belief, well, wealth, to become, let's say, a multimillionaire, is something that takes years to do.
Yes.
But yet you hear so many stories of people that embark on an idea within 6 months or 18 months or 3 years or 5 years, they become multi-millionaires. And you go, and they came up with something as stupid as that?
Yeah.
But yet you see constantly a lot of things out there, if you would just open your eyes, that contradict this belief that somehow we're supposed to struggle to enjoy being alive and having fun. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that through the work that you've done. I'm so glad, Daniel, you raised that point, because that is something that really doesn't get mentioned enough. It's what we go through on the inside. That's the tricky bit. It's always at the point where you're about to quit. It's always at that point where you've just had enough and you're in a complete meltdown, and it's one extra step where the breakthrough happens. So the big thing for everyone out there to know is it's often the way, and I'm not putting this as a belief, but it can often be breakdown before breakthrough. So, and if you can just push through that meltdown, push through all that fear, that's where the success is on the other side of that. And like you said, there are so many beliefs that could be wealth takes years, it could be enlightenment takes years, and sacrifice and giving up all these wonderful things. These are just beliefs, and it doesn't have to be your truth. And
we're all living in the reality that we choose to believe. So it's very helpful to start changing those beliefs to work with what, the experiences that you want.
Now, Daniel, tell or describe to our listeners what this inner voice is, what the experience is like, as it's encountered for you, as well as, in these seminars that you produce, and we'll talk more about those in a bit, but what is that inner guidance? Because sometimes it seems the mind can trick someone. For instance, they may, pose a question about a relationship, and I remember myself even years ago, there was someone that I thought was going to be the one, and of course, she started deciding to go a different direction, and so I'm posing this question, but yet it seemed like the answer was one I was forcing to basically hold the reality, well, what I really want to happen is to have her stick around. But there was a profound moment, when it came to the question of love, for instance. All I want to be is loved by someone. And literally there was a voice of God, if you will, that came in and say, your children love you. And I just went, wow, wait a minute. Where did that come from?
In your own backyard, already there.
But it really was that. It came through loud and clear, and I felt better. I was like, well, she can go wherever she wants now. I don't care. But what has it been like, say, for you, or at least people that you've worked with, and so our listeners kind of have something to take away today? Oh, that's where it comes from, or that's how you start.
Wow. Okay, there are a couple of points there. You asked to describe the experience. Well, it's really interesting. What happens is the brain is kind of like a radio, and you can dial into different frequencies depending on your intention. So if I'm wanting to tap into that space, I hold an intention to access the truth, access what I call it my higher self, if you like. And for some people, it's the God within them, and you can probably relate to it like that. That would be the true and accurate statement. Mm-hmm. And in that intention, all of a sudden my body starts going very relaxed, and I just feel that there is almost like another part of me, or another kind of representation of me kind of hovering around my head or inside my head. And I pose these questions, and I relate to him like a he. And I ask a question. I might say, what message do you have for Daniel today? Like for you on the radio. I say, okay, what message would you have for Daniel today? And the message that comes back is instantly goes, not only are you loved by your kids, Daniel, you're loved by all your listeners as well. So don't forget that. Right. And it just comes back sounding like my own thoughts. But what's different is the way the information comes to me, and it's different for everyone, is it's almost like a whole sentence in a feeling through my body. So it's not words per se, it's like a full body sensation that means a sentence. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's quite challenging to describe to somebody.
Right.
It's like you're given a three-dimensional, fourth-dimensional understanding way beyond words or a vocabulary. So you feel a whole body sensation of what a message actually means.
Oh, okay.
So it's a sublime level, it's profound communication where there's no room for misinterpretation, because you're feeling it, you're seeing it, you're experiencing it all simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that's how the book was written. I get shown how illness happens, I get shown our purpose, I get all those topics in the book were shown to me in this real holistic, full-body experience. And now, the trick is in communicating that.
Now, serendipity, I would come to think that it occurs as a result of the universe.
Yes.
Whatever we want to call this. I like to just say God because it's such a simple word.
Sure. I'll work with that.
And I think everybody would too, but we got to a point where we got so beat up by religion, people want to say the universe, the soul, and all these other things, and they use this politically correct. I just like to say God because it's simple enough.
Well, it's your radio station. We'll say God.
We'll just keep it simple. Anyway, that is the way serendipity, at least to me, as a way of showing you that you are on your own right path. Because that's when things really become easy for you. That's when you get the messages you're doing the right thing. And to give you an idea of this, because I don't ascribe to any particular religion or dogmatic belief, I just figure, there's God, there's love, and for me that's enough. But
yeah, perfect.
What was fascinating is back in, I think it was 1999, when I started broadcasting radio, it was something that I had always wanted to do. And so there I was, kind of a good few months into it, just sort of driving out for my day. It was a relatively nice day in the late fall. And I was listening to a book on tape because all of a sudden I found now as I was broadcasting radio and doing interviews that it became like a candy store with books. Any author, anybody I wanted to talk with, I had access to, and I was like, wow, this is better than I could have ever expected, for one.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of going about my early afternoon, and I still had probably an hour or two to go and pick up my children from school. And as I listened to this, I kind of got caught up in that thought, that dream state of just how cool everything was. I listened to this book on tape, and it was all just sort of coming to me. And the next thing I know, I kind of look up as I'm paying attention to my driving as well, and I kind of snap back into getting out of this dreamy state, which you shouldn't do, and I don't recommend you do while you're driving. But anyway, I looked up, and I kid you not, there was a minivan that somehow was in front of me at a safe distance, because we were just on a regular street. And literally, this is what the license plate said: "God bless you."
Oh, really?
And I went, wow. That here I was caught up in the buzz of what I was doing, and here was this light just right there. What are the odds of seeing something like that? But serendipity, I think, is incredible. What would you say to this, and to what your work is?
Look, it's exactly what you're talking about. That part of us that, when we talk about that all-knowing energy, that all-knowing intelligence that's within us, is a coordinating intelligence that is, for many people, trying to communicate, hey, I'm here, look what I can do, look how I'm coordinating your life, I'm giving you reminders, I'm giving you lessons, start tuning in and start trusting yourself. We are that intelligence. So if you like, a lot of people see God as outside of themselves, but in truth, if you're using that word God, that God is within you. You are God. And that's where humanity has really gone a bit astray, is thinking that God is not them. So all that serendipity, the dreams, coincidences, is that part of ourselves, that higher self, that God within, creating the understanding that you are on track, or in some cases that you are off track.
Right.
So it uses any method available to bring to your awareness what you need to know at any given time. Whether it's the number plate, whether it's turning the radio on and hearing that perfect song, or the perfect person coming into your life, or picking up the all-knowing diary off a bookshelf, whatever it is drawing on all its means available to get the message across. Because that part of you, that all-knowing self, that God within, is saying, hey, I want to play a role in your life. Let me in. I'm going to show you the most amazing time of your life if you let me in, if you trust me.
Even on the other end of that spectrum, too, is an interesting story that I've shared with the listeners and guests over the years, and that was when 9/11 occurred.
Yes.
And what had happened was, that was a particular day that, I decided to sleep in. I get up, it's a nice, beautiful day. It's just after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Pacific Standard Time. And I just decide, I'm kind of in the mood for a country fried steak breakfast, and there was only one place in town that I like to go and have this.
Yep.
So I get in the car, I'm excited, I'm going to go and enjoy some breakfast, have the whole day to myself, and slept in a little bit. And, turn on the car, and the next thing I know, well, where's my music? And we're going to let you know more about this as we get more information, and this sort of weird quietness. What's this?
Yeah.
And it was an emergency thing, and so I didn't think much about it. And the whole way to where I had to go, there was really no information being given out. It was sort of the same thing, we'll let you know as we get more information. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this? What is this emergency they're talking about? So I pull into the place that I'm going to have my breakfast, and as I get to the steps, I read the headlines in the newspaper, and it says, terrorist attack on World Trade Centers, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This all happened while I was asleep? Here's the eerie part. I discovered 9/11, and this breakfast place is a place that's located in Milwaukee, Oregon. The breakfast place is called The Bomber. And
Wow.
everyone who knows what The Bomber is in at least that area in Oregon, on the outside is a B-17 bomber that is outside of this restaurant, a real World War II B-17 bomber. Now just imagine the odds that I get up, it's a happy day, I want breakfast, that's where I want to go, and that's where I discover 9/11.
Wow.
So it works in the weirder ways too.
Did you still have
Because I wanted to know what is
after
the
all
answer to this, what's going on here, and I got my question answered.
Wow. I'd be surprised if you're able to eat after all of that, Daniel.
Well, I did, but I was just like, because it took a while for that to settle in. I think like anybody, but anyway. But tell us, share a story or two, if you could, from people who get to this all-knowing point through your work and what they've experienced. Because I know that you also talk about, healings. That this is our thinking is the source of sickness.
Yes.
Our thinking is the source of our wealth. It's also the source of our poverty. I mean, thinking is pretty powerful, actually.
Well, look, there are many stories to share, and I think one that comes up which is a really interesting one, is because my wife just happened to step in here, so she's sitting here and she just reminded me of it. But there are a couple of really interesting stories. One of which, it came to a point in our relationship where it was time to have a baby. This was 3 years ago, 3 and a bit years ago, and my wife was absolutely petrified of giving birth. And having access to this all-knowing state, we went, well, does birthing really need to be painful? It's like almost a given that if you have a child, it's going to hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's fed to women since the time they're a teenager that it's going to be painful. So we tapped into this all-knowing part of us, and we said, well, how does it really work? And my wife was given this whole series of step-by-step instructions on how to have a pain-free birth. What beliefs were false, what the truth was, how to look after the baby in her tummy, how to look after her body. And after that process, it's 9 months that it happened, and voila, baby arrived and she had an all-natural pain-free birth. Oh. And for so many people, having a pain-free birth is just not a possibility. And that for a lot of people, to me, that was achieving the impossible. But Daniel, if we have time, I've got another story to share. Do we have a minute?
Absolutely, please.
Great. Because in every area of life, we've got a story. So I'll just give a couple here just to paint a bit of a picture. I had a client, or one of the guys who attended one of our workshops, who we knew. He rings me up on New Year's Eve this year, and he's in the emergency ward in a hospital, and he is in absolute agony, and he can barely talk. And he says to me, I'm about to have my gallbladder removed. Is there anything you can do? So I said to him, give me a minute, I'll have a look. So tapping into this all-knowing part of us, I was able to look at his body and say, well, why is there the inflammation in the gallbladder? What's going on there? And his body showed me in an instant, it said he has been hating himself for the last 25 years for the father that he has been for his daughter. He's hated the father he has been. And his body was saying, it's like, I cannot sustain this hate anymore.
Right.
So I'm having this conversation with him, and I said, look, if we can just release that hate, all the pain will go. So I said, you've got a choice. Do you want to spend 15 minutes with me? We'll release that hate, or you can have your gallbladder removed. There's a little pause. So I was a bit surprised at the pause myself, but there was a pause. And he comes back and says, all right, let's do it. 15 minutes later, having had that conversation, all the pain is completely gone. During that conversation, the surgeon had come in to prep him for the operation. He kicks the surgeon out of the room and says, "Get out, I'm on a very important phone call." 15 minutes later, he goes, gets discharged from the hospital. No pain ever again since that moment.
And no gallbladder removal, I take.
No, he's still got his gallbladder, and it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get to see when we go into this kind of this superconscious space, we get to, the brain is this amazing diagnostic equipment. It can diagnose pretty much any illness in the body. We can actually see what are the thoughts, that are subconscious, that are buried deep within the body that are causing these illnesses. And the body, all it's saying, it's kind of like, Daniel, it's a bit like food poisoning. You have food poisoning, the body goes, "Oh, yuck, get this out, I'm going to vomit it up."
Right.
Well, the same is with illness and disease as well. The body's going, that thought that you swallowed, that you've been hanging on for the last 25 years, yuck, I've got to get it out. And the only way I'm going to bring it to your awareness is in your body, so this will flag it to you. So we were able to, bring some awareness to it. The body says, "Great, thank you for looking at it." It disappears. He's out of the hospital.
Daniel, just taking a look at what you've just presented to our listeners here, the gallbladder story, the illness, for instance, people seem to believe nowadays, goodness gracious, advertising certainly throwing enough at us. Cancer, for instance, is one of those. We're just now expected to get cancer, and from what I understand, there's actually a cancer gene in the human body. It's made to perhaps break the body down after you die, because that's just part of the natural process, but that's after you die. So why would we want to get this before we die? But many years ago, I remember interviewing a particular guest that wrote a book that was about 4 women who were in 4 different stages of cancer, and each came from a different religious belief. And they came together in this book. And what I loved about what she said is that we had decided we were cancer initiates. And by that meaning that cancer had actually come as a special divine message to have them really take a look at their lives and realize what perhaps needed to change. And in all cases of each of these 4 women that were presented in this book, and one of them is who I was speaking with, is they were able to heal from this. And I hear and I read about this constantly, yet people still want to continue in the direction of treating cancer the way that we do. Chemotherapy, you name it, the whole gamut, but yet you constantly hear how people just simply learn to forgive, as in this case with the gallbladder surgery gentleman here.
Yeah.
Talk about the power of forgiveness and how quickly this actually works for people.
It's an amazing thing. The way the body works is, as I said, it is a system of truth. If there's non-truth in the body has to have a reaction, and they're the symptoms in our body. So the body is saying, hey, you are believing something that is not only not true, but it is harmful. Mm-hmm. And we need to heal that from you. So the symptoms create in the body. So what we need to do is, instead of viewing the body as faulty or frail, rather see the thoughts as frail. So the cancer is actually, in truth, it's not really in the body. The cancer is in the thoughts, and the body is just reflecting that back so we have that awareness. And it is really sad. I watch this a lot. I see a lot of people who are going down the chemo path and a lot of these kind of modern era methodology out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? One of the biggest things that we see with these people in those kind of illnesses, it's not necessarily even their choice. They're doing it because they're getting pressure from their family.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is a really sad state of affairs. The family is in so much fear of losing this person that the person with the illness no longer has that choice to do what's right for them. And that's really the big message for everyone is you are your own healer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can let go of these thoughts and feelings that we've been carrying around subconscious, not in our awareness, and often it requires forgiving ourselves. It's rarely about forgiving other people. This is about forgiving us. When we can forgive ourselves, I tell you, so many of these illnesses, they just dissipate. And I mean immediately.
Mm-hmm. And I've come to see, again, broadcasting a lot of programs, especially when it comes to coming to know yourself, because most people, as we approach midlife, are looking to change the way they've been doing things, even if it seems to, for a lot of people on the outside, look like, well, everything you've been doing seems successful. You've got an ideal life. Well, that may be true on the outside, but inside, I'm just not feeling so good about this. You hear it on all levels. It doesn't matter whether you're, rich or whether you're poor. If you're unhappy, it doesn't matter what the outside says. What matters is that somehow you're just not content. Somehow, things just aren't working for you. And it's just amazing when you get to that inner core truth. And in your book, that truth is really different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, we are all living in our own kind of unique realities, and this is why it's so important to move away from listening to what everyone else is saying and start reconnecting with our true nature and seeing what that's saying. Because if I had continued to listen to what everyone else was saying, I wouldn't be here. I was heading in a very dangerous direction. I was very unhealthy. I was doing things that were very destructive. I would have missed out on my beautiful wife. I would have missed out on my beautiful child. I would have missed out on this incredible, business and book that we've written. And it was only through listening to what's going on within me that I'm on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the message for everyone. You've got to reconnect. If you're going to get advice from anyone, let it be, how do I trust myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, to me, the most important thing.
I remember, Daniel, as we started our own little business some years ago, is for a lot of people when it comes to leaving the world of work where you're working for someone else's business and decide to start your own, that I think one of the obstacles that perhaps a good many of us face when it comes to taking on this particular challenge is that, well, people who are successful business must know something that I don't, and that's why they're successful. And what's funny about that is that we had attended, it was a fundraiser Monopoly event where everybody gets together for a small admission price you get in, and of course there's prizes, but you actually play Monopoly for an hour. And so you sit at a table of four, and four of you play the game of Monopoly. So there were people at this particular event from all ranges of businesses. And so as I'm sitting at a table playing Monopoly, probably as one of these people who have this thought, well, they're in business, they're successful, they must know something I don't.
Yes.
And I realized in playing this game, I'm whipping some butt. And I said, you know what? I came to a realization that these people weren't any smarter than I was. The only difference is, to me anyway, is they just took action.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so we're going to encourage our listeners today, especially those who are living in the Northwest and the Portland, Oregon area, that you do have a seminar and workshop going on, as I understand. Is it this weekend, starting September 21st?
Yes, we do. We're the bags are packed right now. We're going to be driving down to Portland in about 20 minutes' time. We're going to be running a program at the Western in Portland. That's going to be on the Friday night, and we're going to be doing another little workshop at one of the bookshops there. And I'm looking at my wife going, what's the name? Yeah. Of that place. It's on our website. If you go to allknowingdiary.com, all the details are there. But we're coming down. We would love to see you guys there. We'd love to have some welcoming faces there.
And that was accessingui.com is the website?
Yeah, you can get there, accessingui.com, or if it's easier to remember, allknowingdiary.com. Both will get you to the same place.
Okay.
We're going to be
Yeah, I'm
there.
on your website now. I was going to kind of help you out because it sounded like you stumbled there a little bit. So we've got Portland. It's Portland, Oregon, September 21st through Sunday, September 23rd, and that's where you can get the different modules. And where is this going to be held again?
This is at the module 1 is going to be at the Western Hotel on the Friday night, and then we're going to be doing how to clear your limiting beliefs on the Saturday and how to heal your body as well. And on the Sunday, we're also going to be doing a bit of a book signing and another little workshop as well.
Okay, great. Maybe we can shoot each other an email to find out how perhaps we can meet up with each other. I think that would be great.
Oh, Daniel, I'd love that.
I would too, very much, so hold on. The book is The All-Knowing Diary. Our guest today, Mr. Daniel Recknitzer. I'd like to thank you for being on the program today. This is always such a fascinating subject, and I always believe when we're done that people should walk away feeling very encouraged, like get out there to the mystery of life because it has a heck of a lot more gifts than it has adversity. And if you have adversity in your life, especially according to what you've written in the All-Knowing Diary, hey, that's just a lesson for you to not only learn, but forgive. You know, let that stuff go so you can get on with your life and have some fun. Daniel, go ahead and give out a website again one more time.
Yeah, sure. It's the allknowingdiary.com, the allknowingdiary.com. And if anyone wants to give us a call, we have a U.S. phone here. That's 206-291-3559. I'll read that again. That's 206-291-3559. And we'd love to meet you and organize to see you at one of our workshops coming up.
Very good. Daniel, again, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today. What a pleasure.
It's so much my pleasure, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me.
You betcha.
And thanks for everyone.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, again for tuning in. Become the all-knowing like you were meant to be since the day of birth. We also encourage you to take your all-knowing action out to our website, which is beyond50radio.org. If you find yourself bumping up against the wall, don't worry about it. It's in construction and just about finished. We're putting up a whole new website for everybody to enjoy as well. Also, be sure to sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Just simply go online to our Beyond 50 blog spot. You'll find a nice little place you can do that as well. Again, thank you for tuning in. I'm Daniel Davis. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.